Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the February 23rd Oklahoma City Planning Commission meeting. If you have a cell phone or a pager with you, I would ask that you please turn those off or silence them at this time. If you are not the applicant and you're here to address us about one of the cases and you have not already done so, you can sign up on a little sheet like this or on the table outside the chambers. And if you would give them to the Commission Secretary, we'd be happy to hear you. And with that, we'll go to approval of the minutes of February 9th. Commissioners? Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the February 9th minutes. Cast your votes. And they're approved. Janice, you were a no.
She's a yes.
Now you're a yes? Okay, thank you. The January 26th minutes. And I wasn't here, so I won't vote.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
on my last vote, I needed to abstain, so don't count me. I wasn't at that meeting.
Weren't you here on, you were gone last meeting, John, not on
That's
the
what I said. I won't vote on the 26th of January meeting.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't here.
No, it's not the January 26th meeting that you were here for.
You missed February 9th, John.
No, I did the February 9th meeting first. I did it just because that's the way they appeared on the agenda, so I did them backwards.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
So now we're looking at the January 26th meeting.
Move approval.
Okay, cast your votes. And that's approved. Thank you.
Okay.
Now we're on to continuance requests.
We have several uncontested requests for continuance. Item 17 is PUD 1453. Item 18, PC 10300. And item 19, C6332. A request to continue until March the 8th on each of those items. Item 20, C6333. Request to continue until March the 22nd. Item 21, PUD 1449. A request to continue until May the 24th. Item 22, C6313, a request to continue indefinitely. And item 23, ABC 751, has been withdrawn.
Is there anyone who came to talk to us today about any of the items we just read, which are numbers 17 through 23 on our agenda? We have a motion and a second to approve the continuances. Cast your votes. And the continuances are approved. Thank you.
We have several new requests for continuance. Item 3 is SPUD 653. Item 8, C6336. Item 10, PUD 1451. Item 11, C6321. And item 12, C6322. All requests to continue until March the 8th.
And again, the same question. Is there anyone who came to talk to us today about items 3, 8, or 10, 11, and 12?
Move the other continuance.
Second. Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the additional continuances. Cast your votes. That's approved. Are there any continuance requests from the public today? Okay.
We have nothing on the consent docket today. On items requiring separate vote, item 1 is C6328. It's the final plat of Featherstone Addition, Section 8, Ward 5.
Good afternoon. Chris Anderson with SMC Engineering representing the developer. I do need to address item TE number 3 and TE number 4. TE number 3, although this plat has just 21 lots in it, it does provide, I think, 36 lots past a choke point in the subdivision. We did meet with Mike Wilson of the fire department about this, and this was the layout that he agreed that we could turn in. So that's addressing that TE. Number 4 addresses a common area at the back of the project that's actually a buffer between the project and a tank battery, oil tank battery across the creek, and there's also some oil lines that run through there. What we've agreed to, I met with Terry this morning, and we're going to connect that common area to the common area on the north side of Section 6, which kind of wraps around there, and that will provide access for maintenance for that area. And with that, we agree with the rest of the TEs and request approval of the plat.
Commissioners, Todd, any comments on that one?
The only question that I have is that the setback of 18 feet, if you have the garage in the front, and I know that, Mr. Chairman, you've been pretty diligent about the setback so the car doesn't stick out into a sidewalk. Are
Right.
you okay with that, with 18 feet?
No, I'd much rather see 20.
Yeah, I think we spoke at a minimum of 20.
That's what I thought.
And we're fine with that.
Thank you, Bob.
Well, then, based upon that, I move approval of the variance.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the variance to TE3. Cast your votes. The variance is approved.
And I move approval of the application with the exception that the setback, if you have the garage fronts, I like the one editorial on the 15 feet, if you have the garage behind the building, that's part of what our garage committee had approved to do that, and I like that. It's rare in an application that happens, but I applaud that. But with the exception of the setback is going to be 20 feet rather than 18.
Yes.
And that's in,
Motion.
that's in the TE already, I think.
Oh, it is? Well, if it is, then we don't need to amend it.
Is it there? I'm looking. It's in the text under the summary of application.
Platted, his plat shows a 20-foot setback. It's a PUD that allows 18. He's platting at 20.
Say that again, J.J. Do I need to amend? I mean, do I approve the application as is, or do I have to say it's 20 feet?
It's drawn at a 20-foot setback. It's drawn. We're just saying that the underlying PUD would allow 18, but he's platting it at 20 feet.
Planning it to 20, so he's already doing 20.
All right.
So we're,
So that's my motion, approve the application.
Is there a modification?
yeah, that's the next question.
Oh. What do we want with 4?
Tell
We're
Commissioner Wright
modifying,
again.
we're modifying the common area connection per an exhibit I gave to Terry Massey this morning, which connects it to the common area in Section 6 to provide the access.
All right, well, then with that revision, I move approval.
So there's no way for people in this section, other than going down to Section 6, to get into the common area?
Yeah, and like I said, the common area really is a buffer area. I mean, it's not a, quote, recreation area. It's mainly just a buffer back there, and there's pipelines that run through it.
Okay. All right, then we're good to go. We have a motion and a second to approve item 1. Cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you very much.
Item 2 is C6320. This is a final plat of Sienna Addition Phase 1 in Ward 3.
Warren Peacock with WPM Design Group, representing the applicant. We agree with all the TEs. We've also been working with staff the last couple of weeks on expanding the detention on this project, and there may be some additional comments from the drainage section. We also agree with those particular comments for expanding the detention area, which is called common area at the southwest corner of the property. We're going to extend that to the west. And I've talked with the developer, or the property owner that owns that property to the west, and he's agreed to allow us to do that, give us a deed to that property. So, but we agree with the staff comments, and we'll make those changes.
Buck, do we need any additional TEs based on the detention discussion? That you think we're okay with?
There was something about moving
Microphone?
There was a comment by Adair about moving the detention back so that it's out of the right-of-way. I'm not sure if we've captured that or not.
Right, we want to revise the plat boundary to include the detention area.
Right.
That's
Out of the
I got that
right-of-way.
one too
okay.
close. Yeah, that's not a problem. We got room to move it to the north, because those tracks to the north are a little bit bigger than half acres, so we're okay.
Okay. Are there people signed up for this?
Not on this item. Well, actually, yes. Jim Roberts? If you would give us your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Jim Roberts, 12641 Southwest 31st, Yukon, Oklahoma. I live to the south of that where the drainage goes through my property and others, and our biggest concern is, of course, is the drainage. You've addressed Mr. Peacock has addressed going to the west and enlarging that detention pond. My question is he has an agreement, does he have an easement or some legal way of being able to move that to the west? Another question I would have would be, is the city or is the developer's engineer in charge of the sizing of the pipes to take that to the detention pond? Because right now, if you look to the north of that property is part of the original PUD. And I assume that, and I'm assuming because I don't know and I don't think you actually know what how that's going to be addressed, because that's not in the 14.3, but there's a drainage issue that comes from the north there that all goes into that detention pond. Also from the west, that area there all comes to the detention pond, gathers at one spot where they're going to put the detention pond, and then there's a creek that runs through our properties to the south. So I don't know who the engineer would be that would size those drainage pipes and everything to do this. And that's one issue. The other issue, that the road comes straight from the north to the south to 29th Street, and according to one thing that I saw, there's supposed to be drains in the street to take that to the detention pond. Does that mean, since it's a slope like this, they're going to put a belly in that road in order to catch the water there and drain it to the detention pond? You know, these are questions that I don't know if you know, I don't know for sure. So I think I covered the easement from Mr. Bishop to Mr. Rhodes to expand that detention pond.
Well, I think the partial answer to your question is that Mr. Peacock would probably do the engineering drawings. They would have to be approved by our Public Works Department engineers. So it would require city approval before anything is constructed.
Well, and with the engineering department, since the C-20 only pertains to 14.33 acres, would it take into account the additional drainage that it would get when the rest of us develop to that detention pond? If I don't know if you can tell or not, but yeah, right there at the top, at the very top, but there's a line that goes straight across. That water runs from there to the south because it's sloped all the way that way. And so are they going to take into account that when they size all that? Mr. Peacock.
He's absolutely right, but we've provided an overall drainage plan for the entire 60 acres, and we are counted for all of that drainage through the first phase in the detention pond that will be picked up there. So we did provide the city already, and that was part of our review of our paving and drainage plans, but it was a drainage for the entire 60 acres.
Okay, thank you.
And I do have a letter from Mr. Bishop signed, its agreement to give us a deed to that property to the west to expand that pond, if you'd like to see it.
Thank you.
I think that's the assurance that we need, because I don't know whether you noticed or not in our letter to show you, but it is flooded down that way. And when we got a letter from the staff, it said the detention pond wasn't to be required at this time. As after Judy Webb got flooded, that then it would be done. But I think that's been corrected according to Mr. Peacock.
Thank you for coming down. Judy Webb? You'd give us your name and address, please.
Judy Webb, 12601 Southwest 31st, Yukon, Oklahoma.
Can you pull the microphone down just a little bit closer? Just pull it down
like
to
that?
you.
Judy Webb,
That's my thank you.
12601 Southwest 31st.
Thank you.
My issue was strictly with the drainage and the detention. Jim has talked, and he knows more about the drainage than I do. They seem to have covered it. I'm perfectly happy if they are going to have the detention pond, because I'm the lowest point, and I would be the one that would be flooded first. I don't want to be flooded. Checking into flood insurance now to make sure that I am covered in every way. That was my issue. So
Okay.
if they're okay with it, I am too. Thank you.
Thank you for coming down. Okay, Commissioners, any questions of Mr. Peacock?
No, I think that Warren's worked well with the city to address their issues. If there aren't any other questions or issues, I'll make a motion to approve this application.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 2. Cast your votes. And that's approved.
Thank you.
Item 3 has been continued. Item 4 is ABC 752. This is an application by Divine Swine for an ABC 1 overlaying C3 Community Commercial District at 7801 North May Avenue in Ward 2.
Is the applicant here? Well, I don't have any trouble figuring out what you're serving.
Good.
Your name and address,
Courtney Evans,
please. And your address.
2901 North Cornwall Place, Oklahoma City.
Thank you. And just tell us what you're operating a restaurant.
We're
I know that,
operating
but
a
not everyone does.
restaurant, Pork Bistro, open at lunch and open for dinners on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights, and brunch from 9 to 2 on Saturday and Sunday.
And you're looking to serve beer or beer and wine?
Beer and wine.
Okay. Questions, anyone? Nope. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 4. Cast your votes. And you're approved.
Thank you.
Item 5 is SPUD 655, an application by James and Mina Akwayi to rezone 10501 South Blackwelder Avenue from R4 to SPUD 655 in Ward 5.
Is the applicant here? Shall we put this to the heel of the docket and then decide what to do? Let's do item...
Item 6 is C6334. It's a final plat of Waterview Office Park in Ward 5.
Bill Swain with Cardinal Engineering, representing Pinnacle, the owner and developer. We agree to the TEs and just here for questions if you have any.
Okay, Commissioners, no one has signed up.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve item 6. Cast your votes. And that's approved.
Item 7 is C6335. It's a final plat of Settlers Ridge, Section 3 in Ward 3.
Good afternoon. I'm Kendall Dillon with Craft & Toll, representing the applicant, and we are in agreement with all the TEs. I will mention on TE number 3, we're asking for a variance in regards to the access requirements. We have met with the Fire Marshal's office with Mike Wilson, and he has no issues or problems with it. So with that, we'd ask for your approval on the variance and the plat.
We've granted the variance before. And no one has signed up for this item.
So move for approval on the variance first.
Yeah.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the variance. Cast your votes, and the variance is approved.
And move for approval on the application.
Second.
Motion and second to approve item 7. Cast your votes. And that's approved.
Item 8 has been continued until March the 8th. Item 9 is CE 821, application by Rico Development, Downtown Development, LLC, to close a portion of South Harvey Avenue and Southwest 2nd Street, adjacent to blocks 3 through 8 and the South Oklahoma City Addition in Ward 6.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, Brian Kuhn with Kuhn Engineering, representing the applicant. This property is essentially, it's 2nd Street west of the Chesapeake Arena, and then Harvey south of the Myriad Gardens. We went through Downtown Design Review Committee last week, and they approved it, and staff has not mentioned any unfavorable considerations, no TEs, so we're requesting approval.
Brian, I'd like to suggest that the Harvey segment remain open at this time. We think the convention center is going to go here. We don't know that it's going to go here yet. The Harvey spine is the main center line that runs from north of the Devon Tower all the way down to the river and to the bridge across the interstate. and it can always be closed when we actually know definitively that the convention center is going to go there, but if it doesn't, we need to come back and reopen it again. And it seems like one more step than we need to take.
Okay.
I mean, that's the central spine running all the way down from the central business district all the way through what would be Core to Shore and the bridge across the new alignment of I-40.
I understand what you're saying. Let me do this, because I don't want to have to just say okay and then come back 2 more months from now and get another application. I'd rather continue it for right now, because there's lots of things moving on this.
Well, I know there are a lot of moving parts, but this seems to me one that maybe should kind of...
Let me just continue, if I could, for 2 weeks, if that's okay, because I think the city's somehow involved in this too, so let me just find out what's going on. Like I said, Downtown Review thought, yes, let's get it done, so let me find out what's going on there, and we'll just, if we could, come back 2 weeks. Because there's no big hurry for this, obviously.
Yeah. Share that I'd like to be in that conversation or be aware of it, because it is something I think we need to think about carefully.
Let's just continue it for 2 weeks, if that's okay.
We do have a couple of people who have come down and signed up who are concerned about maybe even other segments of this. Is it Donald Smith and Richard Dunkel? Are you together?
We're not together, but we know each other.
Oh, okay. Well, you're...
My name is Donnie Smith. My brother and I own and operate a business at 2nd and South Hudson. That business, we've owned that property for 55 years, and I'm here to protest the closing of 2nd Street from Hudson to Walker because it greatly impacts on what we do at that business. Oh, in the big picture, that's where we fit, right there on that corner.
I can't see the big picture.
Move it over here, Dick. Move it out here.
Yeah. Need to put it in front of us so we can see it. Thank you.
Just don't let me hit you with a laser. There, right there on that corner of 2nd and South Hudson. The address is 301 South Hudson. Flip it, Dick. We've been in downtown Oklahoma City now for a total of 55 years. We were at 2 locations prior to being, we were underneath Interstate 40 and got condemned there, and then moved to the present property and bought it in 1958 and have owned it ever since and have improved it, the building somewhat. You got that upside down? No.
No, it's right.
We own 7 lots. We employ 5 full-time employees, counting myself and my brother. Our business is not necessarily oriented to the city of Oklahoma City. It's more or less statewide. We do auto, commercial, truck, large ag tires, large industrial tires. Our business has grown tremendously over that 55 years. We own, at the present time, we own 7 lots that face 2nd Street. If 2nd Street is closed, it greatly hampers the entrances and the exits into our property. At the present time, we've got a driveway on 2nd, 2 driveways on 2nd, one to the west and one to the east. We've got 2 driveways that come in off of Hudson Avenue. Those are accessed round to the south side of our building, which makes another exit or entrance back in the alley, which is on the south side of our building. What happens if they do close 2nd Street? If you close 2nd Street, the traffic flow out from my business will be greatly hampered. I'll have to do one of 2 things. And we do a large amount of truck, tractor trailers, 10-wheelers, etc. I'll have to back them out into Hudson Street, which causes the problem. If it is closed also, I'll have to divert that traffic down the alley, up Walker, up to Reno, which I'm really impressed with the improvements on Reno, but it still restricts the flow of traffic in. But if I come out, down the alley, up Walker, to 2nd Street, back to Hudson, here's my easy access to the new Interstate 40. which makes it almost just exactly like it was before. I had an on-ramp here, which got me west, and then over 2 blocks, I had a eastbound on-ramp, which got me east. And with the ramp like it is now, it's even easier for me to get in and out of my business property and cut down on the traffic than what it was before. But I say again, if I know probably what's going to happen here. I have no idea what's going to happen here. The people that own this property, and they also own it behind it. But I say again, they do not own the 7 lots that face 2nd Street that we've had in our families for 55 years.
Okay, Mr. Smith, you understand that the applicant is asking to continue this case for a couple of weeks based on now, I think, maybe your concerns as well as what I raised regarding Harvey, keeping Harvey open.
Right, I heard what you said about Harvey.
So we'll be back in a couple of weeks as well to hear this one again.
You mean I've got to sleep with this again?
Well, yeah, for 2 weeks, yes, you do. Yeah, for 2 weeks you do.
Okay.
We're not going to vote on it today.
Any other questions? But you can see my dilemma.
Yes, we do. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
could I ask him that Brian get together with him and discuss that issue with him?
Well, Brian's, he's going to have to meet with Mr. Dunkel as well.
We will talk.
Okay.
Brian, Mr. Dunkel, let's hear your concerns.
My name is Richard Dunkel. I operate the Oklahoma Halfway House. I'm the executive director of the Oklahoma Halfway House, the corner of 2nd and Dewey. Especially with the new Interstate 40 visitors coming to visit family members at our facility. We've got 140 residents at our facility. Visitors coming to visit their family members are more confused than ever with the limited access getting off to come to downtown Oklahoma City. One way that they do come is they get off on, they get off on Robinson, and they can finagle and come down 2nd Street. They're not going to be able to do that. Right now, they get off on Western, and that's very confusing. If they get anywhere near Reno, the congestion is so great, they have trouble negotiating that. So we've used 2nd Street primarily as a way to get to that facility. So it's going to be a hardship for us to be able to have family members, give them directions to come and go, et cetera, et cetera. It also, we've been there since 1966. It concerns me that people can come into the area and make decisions that affect your business and never talk to you about it. I'm kind of offended by that. I mean, we've tried to be good neighbors with all the folks. That's how Donnie and I know each other. Nobody says boo to me until I see that there's going to be a hearing on closing the road that will impact our facility. So, again, I was kind of offended by that, and I wanted to come down and express my protest to that at this time.
Thank you very much. Any further, Brian?
No, I just want to get his...
Okay, we'll take Nick.
Mr. Chairman, I have just a question for Brian when he's free. I understand the block, or really 2 blocks between Hudson and Robinson. That's the convention
center site.
I'm not sure I understand why they want to close 2nd Street in the first place.
You mean to the west?
To the west. That last block from
Hudson to Walker.
Hudson to Walker.
Right.
And perhaps he can tell me that. I mean, there has to be a reason.
And I'll tell you that in 2 weeks.
We're as well informed as we are.
Well, he wants to keep you in suspense, Nick.
Yeah.
That's no. I'll know and then I'll let you know.
You know, and while I'm in suspense, I'm sitting here curious in suspense as to if there's a 100-pound or 800-pound gorilla loose here. This looks like a runaway application that maybe shouldn't have gotten this far without some discussion with some of these people.
Yes, sir. Mr. Dunkel? We're sympathetic to the point you raised that...
Okay, but I again want to address the thing of if this is a business interest of an individual or a group of individuals, I don't know how that would outweigh the business interest of several people who are not in favor of that. I mean, if it's for the betterment of Oklahoma City and it has something to do with Oklahoma City, it's one thing. If it's individuals, private owners, our interests should weigh as much as theirs. I mean, we've been there since 1966. We've paid our taxes. We've voted our shares. And again, I'm kind of offended that no one would take the time to talk to us.
Well, this is the prospective site of the convention center that's been very highly sized over, I don't know, a year or more. So the notion that some focus would occur on this block is not any kind of a surprise. But we're not there yet. I'll take a motion in a second to continue this for 2 weeks.
I move we continue this item for 2 weeks.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue item 9 for 2 weeks. Cast your votes, and it's continued.
Items 10, 11, and 12 have been continued until March the 8th. Item 13 is C-6329. This is the final plat of Regency Point, Section 4 in Ward 8.
Kendall Dillon with Crafton Toll, representing the applicant, and this is an application that obviously was continued a couple of weeks ago. And in regards to the TEs, we are in agreement with all the TEs, but I would like to ask that TE number 3 and TE number 4, which pertain to the street stub west into Ironstone, that those 2 TEs be deleted. As per, I think that you all received a letter from Ironstone people, and with the agreement that we're willing to provide that stub at Northwest 158th Street. So that's kind of the agreement that we've got, and with that, we'll ask for your approval.
Well, Commissioners, no surprise, we've got some people signed up.
Well, Mr. Chairman, by way of a little history, Ironstone came in with a undesirable plat, according to the Regency people. We negotiated a deal, if you'll recall. We had it negotiated at one point for a revised plat where this stub was eliminated. That revision never came to pass because we never approved it. There was a lawsuit which required the previous plat to come back. This stub is not needed for public safety. We've determined that. Regency is private streets. They can put a crash gate up to block access here. The reason for the variance is to provide for quarter section connectivity. Well, with a private development and a public development, there is none if they so elect. So that becomes a moot point. I know of no one who is in favor of this stub in Regency. I understand the 2 developers have gotten together, but our staff report shows 160 people in protest in the neighborhood. I will tell you, I've had contact with over 30 people in the neighborhood. They're all united, not wanting this stub. What I would propose is approving this plat with the variance set out in TE3, deleting the stub. And with that, I would make a motion for that variance, unless you want to hear from all these people.
I'll second that.
For those of you who signed up, given that the motion is to approve the variance to TE3, which means no street stub, does anyone feel compelled to address us? I think you're getting what you're asking for if you're protesting. We have a motion and a second to approve the variance to TE3. Sir?
I had signed up to talk on behalf of the abutting property owner.
Oh, okay. Comstock.
My name is William Comstock, 501 Northwest 13th Street, Oklahoma City. I represent Lone Oak Investments, the owner of the Ironstone addition to the west. This is a unique set of circumstances. If this motion passes, it throws the Ironstone subdivision into noncompliance with the subdivision regulations. I've never seen this set of circumstances come up before. I don't think it's the intent of this commission to throw the neighbor out of compliance with the subdivision regulations.
Mr. Comstock, could I interrupt you for a moment?
Yes.
If the Ironstone plat is developed as it is platted, and the connection to the west is made, why is Ironstone out of compliance?
The connection to the west may never occur because ODOT may not allow access to Portland, or at least not until it is widened and there's a service road.
Well, and it is being widened next year. What your clients have told this commission is they would like to develop Ironstone at this point in time. They have no intention of developing their apartment zoning at this time until the market turns around and until Portland is in fact improved. That being the case, my question comes back to what it was. Their plat requires a connection to the west, which will be built according to them, which keeps them in compliance. If they piecemeal their Ironstone development, which they probably will, there may be a time in that piecemealing that they would need a second entrance. I would submit to you that this commission, and I certainly would support this, I suspect the commission would, we would be glad to, in the interim, vary those final plats to allow them to continue to build Ironstone as it is preliminary platted.
Mr. Gale, I appreciate those words and the sentiment. You commissioners may not be here. There may be another set of commissioners at that time.
That's very true.
And I understand and appreciate you cannot bind a future body to any deal. But my client believes its options are certainly limited if this entrance into Regency Park is done away with as far as developing the rest of Ironstone.
Well, it's not going to help Ironstone for circulation. It can only help Ironstone for public safety, because Regency will put a crash gate on it. So, again, it's a moot point as far as I'm concerned, and I know your folks are unhappy. They've been unhappy with this. That's why they filed a lawsuit, and I know that this gives them another opportunity to have their say and rub our nose in it. Duly noted. But I don't believe this stub belongs here. We all agreed at one point in time it didn't belong here, and I support the variance.
Commissioner Gales, I resent the remark, rub your nose in it. My client has never taken that position. I certainly haven't. They just want to get along, develop property. As you recall, Ironstone was part of a PUD that was approved years ago. This commission approved it. The plat was in accordance with that PUD. There was nothing extraordinary, no extraordinary action taken, and certainly nobody's nose was rubbed in it. Nobody took delight at spending many dollars and lost time to get that preliminary plat and final plat approved.
Commissioners, any other discussion? We have a motion and a second before us to approve the variance to TE3. You ready to vote? It's approved.
Move the application.
Do I have a second? The motion is second to approve item 13. Cast your votes. And that's approved. Item 14, I guess, is next.
Item 14 is SN 073. This is to consider a resolution changing the name of Northwest 96th Street to Dr. J.D. Goldsmith Street, lying between Northwestern Avenue and the AT&SF Railroad in Ward 7.
I'm Don Davis. I represent the applicant. And the application does not appear as it appears here. There's been an amendment to that application in its own file, and instead of the initials and the doctor, all of that has been removed. And it's a block that is owned from Western going east to the railroad track, approximately 500, 600 feet. The entire block is owned by the church. And they're asking that it be changed to Jeffrey Goldsmith Court. And that is on the application on file.
We understand that. There's a disconnect between the agenda item and the actual staff report. So.
Well, I did not mean to.
No, that's fine.
I was just looking at the way it appears here and the way it was announced.
You helped clarify it for us. Thank you. Commissioners, you've all seen the staff report, and the staff position is that it conflicts with the guidelines we have for naming streets. What discussion is there? No one has signed up, by the way.
Well, Mr. Chairman, when I look at it, the concerns I have is that how it is in direct conflict with the guidelines as far as for public safety. We have in Oklahoma City, all the east-west streets are numbered streets, and when we start getting out of that sync, it causes problems for emergency vehicles, and especially it kind of magnifies when it's a small portion because it has caused some public safety issues. So that's my main problem with that.
Well, I think that a few years back we did spend, and the city council did spend some time coming up, because these used to come up regularly before we had the guidelines that we have now, and it resulted in somewhat of a hodgepodge of approvals, disapprovals, et cetera. And I think that two things concern me, as you said, James, is on this one. One, it's not in compliance with the guidelines. Two, is it's taking a small segment of a street that continues
on both ends.
Both ends, and that certainly I can't agree with. Plus, it's a street that's connected between Classen Boulevard and Western Avenue, and there's a significant number of properties back to the east I see that could be potentially affected. It's just too far out of step for me to get there personally. Out of the guidelines. Again, due respect. These are always challenging. Due respect to the pastor and Mr. Goldsmith or Bishop Goldsmith. It's just too far outside the guidelines for me.
Is that a motion?
Yes, that is a motion.
Second.
One thing I would speak to is that they own all of the property from Western going east to the railroad track. Mm-hmm. There are no other residents in there.
We realize that.
The only emergency vehicles that would come there would come from the east, and they would not come past that point and then go back. They would come in north and then go west. I don't think it impacts the emergency vehicles to that extent. As to the other problems, as to the names, that's been removed. The initials and the titles have been removed from that.
I'm still convinced by
We have a
motion
motion and a
at least.
second for denial. Any further discussion, commissioners? Cast your votes. And it is denied.
Thank you.
Do I have to make special application to get it appealed to the council?
No.
No, you could just, you go to the council, you take our denial with you.
All right.
But you can go directly to city council as your next step.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 15 is a resolution to receive the Bricktown Strategic Plan, which we heard in the study session this morning, and AJ is here to answer any further questions on that, since we had to cut the Q&A portion short this morning.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second to receive the Bricktown application resolution to forward this to council. Is that correct?
Correct.
Cast your votes, and it goes on to council. Next.
Didn't we want to hear that again?
No.
Oh. He's really done two today.
You're funny, Bob. I'll come back to it. Item 16 is next. Resolution of the Planning Commission adopting a policy and procedure encouraging mediation with disputing parties. That's my summary of the sentence.
Move approval, I guess is what we do, right?
Okay, motion and second to approve the resolution. Cast your votes. And that's adopted. We're back to item 5.
Which is SPD 655, an application by James and Mina Aki to rezone 10501 South Blackwelder from R4 to SPUD 655.
This does extend, I think, consistent with the existing development.
No. Commissioners, Mr. Odom called me earlier this afternoon and said he would not be able to be here, but requested that you go ahead and act on the item if you would.
I've spoken with the seller of the property, and they are in agreement and helped form this document, and so I don't have an issue with it. If I would go ahead and move approval.
Second.
I have one question just for the staff. This might be pretty obvious. What's the separation between the private drives? What is the separation requirement between two private drives? They have two drives coming out on Blackwelder.
There's really no separation. It's the same as a circle drive.
Okay.
So it's a one-way in, one-way out.
Okay. Well, the reason I said it because they have 24-foot wide drives, and that gives me the impression that that's in and out on both sides. Okay.
The applicant does own the two buildings directly to the east of this. You can see one of them has a little flat roof on it. There's a building identical to that directly to the east of that. This is just a part of acquiring more property for their business.
Okay, we do have a motion and a second to approve item 5. Cast your votes. And that's approved. That concludes the public hearing segment. Planning Commission committees. Planning Commission.
Did anybody happen to see the commentary last night? I think it was on Channel 5 about saltwater wells.
No.
On 9.
It was kind of interesting. One of the gentleman that was that owned the property, that salt was getting in his well. The injection well company decided to re-drill the well on it. So, in one of the statements from one of the people from the overseer of those injection wells, and I can't think of the department that it was, but he says that happens very, it doesn't happen real often, but it does happen. So, and I don't know, they said in Oklahoma County we had like 1,400 of those injection wells. Is that correct?
That's probably right. Sounds right.
Something like that. So, we've had this before, and, we've had discussion on it. We've had people from the Water Resources Board here talking about it, but that does happen, and it will happen, and I think we really need to, have
some background on this thing before we approve very many more of those.
Mr. Janice?
I have a question. You know, I actually try really hard not to pay too much attention to what happens to things once we vote on them here, because it's too aggravating. But I guess there are a couple of things that have happened recently at City Council that concerned me, one of which was sort of specific comments that were made about our efforts to see that signs which are on properties that are no longer in use are adjusted in whatever way we can adjust them once people have to come back to us for something. And the comments that were made were, you know, that the City Council is not going to go along with that unless, you know, they separately decide to adopt some sort of policy to that effect. What prompted me to ask this question, though, has to do with these changing of names. And I was going to ask the staff if they know and can say as any kind of a sort of rule of thumb whether they are routinely ignored once they go to City Council, or I mean, is it really varied? Or I hate to see organizations like this one come down here and spend money on these if we're really serious about not permitting them. But I know, you know, at City Council, of course, there's a much more leeway given to different wards in terms of the preference of the council person from that ward. And I would really like to see, I guess I'm saying, staff discourage these organizations from spending their money for, you know, a pointless reason. Unless it's, I mean, obviously they're willing to take their chances, and if it's really something that the council does with some regularity, then, you know, so be it, but...
Not really. And we're very careful to make sure they have a copy of and understand the policy. It was in your staff report. It was the street naming policy. That's attached to our application for street name changes. So they get that up front, and we had conversations over the phone with this person and a few in the past with the same situation, and made sure they understood that this was far outside the policy, and we were going to recommend against it. So they chose to push forward.
Okay. Well, I mean, you know, there's only so much we can do, obviously, but I just hate to see them waste their money.
Well, but don't they have to come here first and have it denied, and then they go to council? Isn't that the procedure? They can't go straight to council.
No.
So they have to go to council for approval. Even if we approve it, they still have to go to council.
No. Yeah, I know that. But
in either case, they go to council.
Because, I mean, just the vote this afternoon, you know, unless it's some extraordinary, heroic figure that is nationwide known.
Oh, I get it.
I may consider that.
I guess the first part of my question
I think our policy is correct.
Does council ever grant these?
It's gone both ways. I can go back and look at all the ones and let you know that what was approved since the adoption of their policy.
Okay. Well, I'm just curious about it. I mean, if it's the kind of thing where, no, the council hasn't approved one in 10 years, I'd really kind of like to convey that information. I mean, I know as long as it's possible, we can't prevent people from paying their money if they want to, but I would like to discourage them if it's pointless. You know, these churches, I'm sure they don't have a fortune to spend on stuff like this, and I just hate to see them waste
Maybe
money.
a few more applications like today, where there's unanimous denial, will give the signal that you ain't going to get the street changed.
Well, if they know it, it might, but I mean, you know, whether anybody, you know, pays attention to that kind of stuff or not.
With respect to your earlier comment, though, about signs and what we do with monument signs and discouraging more signs, another part of the council discussion was an acknowledgement that was, this won't be a direct quote, but it'll be close. It's clear that the Planning Commission has figured out what kind of a policy they think we ought to have, and, you know, it's incumbent upon us at the council to have a policy, meaning they've got a vacuum where signs are concerned, and it's something they're beginning to realize they need to address, and they don't like the proliferation of signs. So, I mean, we may be in a little different environment than we've been in historically. So, I mean, there's been that kind of comment as well.
You may have had more positive ears on than I had when I was listening to that. You know, to me, it was sort of a classic opportunity. It wasn't that it was, you know, a sign. It wasn't that no action was being taken. You know, the applicant had to come and get approval.
Right.
So it seemed to me like a ripe opportunity, but I guess that's just the difference between our outlook and theirs.
Well, that's not the only one missed in the last 2 weeks, so there you are.
They are going to discuss the issue, by the way. They are going to discuss the
Are
issue.
they?
They may already be doing so.
I mean, there were definitely comments made about how all you have to do is go out and look up and down May Avenue or whatever. I mean, you know, there was not a great deal of, we need more signs. It wasn't that, but we need more pole signs, I guess.
Any other items, commissioners? Planning Department?
I probably don't need to remind you that, you know, we have the next Citizens Advisory Team meeting tomorrow afternoon, and I would encourage you to attend, whether you're on the committee or not, because, you know, as we go through this refinement of goals, and after that, I'm not so certain of how much engagement is going to be required until we've made substantial progress on the policy development piece of it. But we are going to obviously engage you as often as possible. We did do an update to council on Tuesday also, and they were, you know, they asked questions. They're very interested in being briefed on the goal refinement and also the development of the policies as well. So that's good.
Can we get the same briefing from time to time so we know too?
We tell you whenever we know something. Because obviously this is important to everybody. And then the next Planning Commission meeting, we'll have another study session on CIP again, and there'll be Public Works, utilities, and maps. Would be more land use component.
I found that those discussions have been very helpful.
Development Services? Our last citizen to be heard walked out. Motion to adjourn. We are adjourned at 2:29.